Hi, this is Marta from Ruby Soup with Pearl Juice. This is my 100 subscribers special, and there were a lot of people that sent me some questions, and today I'm answering all of them. Let's start off with Louisity, who asked, paperback or hardcover? Do you hate mass market paperbacks? Now, first off, it really kind of depends on the cover. I do like a very pretty cover, but more often than not, I do prefer hardcover. But because the thing is that most books that I buy them from Stockholm or Helsinki, and in those two cities, hardcovers are super, super expensive. So even if I do prefer that format a little better, then I reluctantly often buy paperbacks because they're just cheaper. When it comes to mass market paperbacks, I think it was called, Now, I haven't come across this format very much here in Scandinavia or in the Nordic countries, but I'm neutral to any kind of format really, as long as the pages aren't falling out of the book. He also asked, who are your favorite booktubers? And this is a really tough call, but if I would have to be going on my mood right now and a little bit more with my honesty, I would say Joss from Scribble Reads and Mercy Bookish Musings. These two booktubers do a lot of content that is about literary fiction, and I tend to gravitate more towards literary fiction, so I like seeing content about that genre. Miss Magic Girl asked, favorite fiction author? Again, this is a really tough call, but I'm gonna have to go with Margaret Atwood, because not only is Margaret Atwood really fearless when she explores gender dynamics and gender politics, but she also experiments a lot in her writing. She tells really different stories with each book, and she also she does all sorts of different kinds of genres, if you may. She's done speculative fiction, but she also writes contemporary, she also writes historical fiction, and she even did a retelling of the Odysseus. And I really admire that when authors are unafraid to go to new territory and explore different ways of telling stories. She also asked, favorite poet? Hands down, Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes was a Black American poet who was very productive during the Harlem Renaissance, and his poems they're super political. But what's really inspiring about him is that he wrote poetry that was very hopeful. Not hopeful in the sense that, everything works out eventually. Really just kind of that if we fight for things and if we stand up for ourselves, we can make a difference. When you read his poetry, it's really hard not to tear up and to get very emotional. I could spend all day just reading his poems. They're just so perfect. Definitely check out some of his poetry. I'll leave the link to some of his poems that you can find on the net down below. And the final question that Miss Magic Girl asked was, favorite comic and manga? I would have to say that my favorite comic of all time is Purse Police by Marianne Satrapi. That's a graphic memoir about Miss Satrapi's childhood in Iran and when she was growing up during the Iranian Revolution, and about how she then ended up moving to France. Just the right mixture of comedy and tragedy, and she blends just how funny life is, but also just how sad life can be in so effortlessly. And it's even if it is a memoir, it's such a compelling story. It's just a flawless work, really. You should definitely check it out. And my favorite manga is X-Day by Setona Michuruhiro. I have blogged about this manga. I'll leave the link down below about that. And what I like about it is that it's really honest and talks about real issues. The people in this manga, they're very realistic characters. They don't overreact to things. Their emotions are very much how people would feel in real life. And I also like how this manga is very sex positive. Sex is not made into an overly dramatic thing, or it's not sensationalized. It's just a part of life, and it's just so effortlessly put in there. Definitely recommend. Two Scribes ask, what books changed your life or influenced your way of thinking? Thanks. Probably the first book that comes to mind is Waiting for the Barbarians by G.M. Coetzee. This is a surrealistic fable-like story about a unnamed country where they start to have this propaganda about barbarians coming and killing and hurting people. And I read that book when I was 15, and it really made an impact on me. I got involved in human rights activism, and still to this day, I work with human rights issues. So that definitely is one book that has affected me. Also, The Breadwinner by Dedora Ellis. I read that when I was 9. I think that book made me a little bit into a feminist, actually. So that one too. And also, this one might be a little bit controversial, so I'm not really going to talk about it all that much. But Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion has been really important to me. Even if Dawkins himself is kind of like, as a person. Mascara at Midnight asks, what's your favorite movie to watch over and over? One show that I have been watching my entire life, and I still have not gotten tired of seeing it, even if I've basically watched it ever since I was a baby, is the first 14 seasons of The Simpsons. It's just such a feel-good TV show, and it always just makes me so happy. There's problems with it, that the diversity isn't all that well done, and that it's not very diverse overall. But the Simpson family and just how they are together as a family, how optimistic the TV show was at times while also being like really clever and funny. It's just so precious. A movie that I think is the most rewatchable is the anime Spirited Away, Studio Ghibli's big masterpiece. That is a movie that I've never gotten tired of seeing. I've seen it 6 times, and it's still as brilliant as the first time I saw it. Kathy Trithard asked, what are your top 3 favorite book genres? I would have to say contemporary, dystopia, and magical realism. Are there any tropes you despise? Well, there's quite a lot of tropes I don't like, but I'm gonna try and just go through them really quickly. I don't like it when there is gratuitous rape in a book. And I also don't really like it when there are like pointless rape jokes in a book. That's a big no-no for me. I also really don't like it when an atheist or skeptic character is in the last minute like converted to a religious belief or to a superstitious belief. I find it actually quite offensive, to be honest. And another like more obscure trope that I don't like, that I have come across quite a bit in books, is literary fiction books that focus on relationships that have white, straight, cis, able-bodied, able-minded, financially stable to the point that financial problems never are brought up in the book, couples that share the same nationality and are from the same ethnic or linguistic group, that this is a couple that you have, and then you present it as a universal love story that everybody should relate to, and it very grossly ignoring the fact that things like class and gender and sexuality and race and all these things do complicate relationships a little bit. Whenever I read those stories, I always think like, wow, this author is like really sheltered and really privileged. Ave ask, why did you choose to start a YouTube channel? Well, I have been blogging for quite a while. I blogged ever since I was in high school, and I just kind of thought that it would be good to explore a little bit about how to talk about culture in other medias. Also, I was kind of hoping that if my channel kind of took off in a little bit, that publishers would send me free copies of books to review. Because quite a few booktubers I've noticed say like, oh, I got this copy in exchange for an honest review for free. And I think that just sounds great. So Fingers crossed for that. What are your current favorite books, comic book series that you regularly read? And then he also said here, look forward to the Q&A. Thank you. A book series that I really like, that I'm reading right now, is the SMS from Sopro Quartet. Those are young adult novels about a young Sami girl who is rediscovering her roots and her identity, and she is trying to learn the Sami language. And for those who don't know, the Sami are a Nordic country indigenous group, and that's what these books are tackling. I really enjoyed those. I really like how they talk about identity and about what it means to self-identify, and it's, they're not maybe the most like beautifully written books, but the themes are just so well handled that it's just, they really touch me. And a comic that I'm reading right now, that's an ongoing series that I absolutely adore, is Saga by Brian K. Vaughan. And that is a science fiction, kind of like Romeo and Juliet in space. Two people from opposite sides of an intergalactic war fall in love, and then they have a baby. And there's like a lot of really unique, very brave, very daring topics that the series takes up. And I also love it that it's like super diverse. The woman in the relationship, she's black, and the male love interest, he's Asian. And then there's a lot of LGBTQ characters. There's a trans woman that shows up in the series, and everybody's like a fully fleshed out person that you could almost believe like that, like, yeah, like these people almost kind of seem like they could be real. It's also really beautifully drawn, so if you haven't checked it out, I really recommend it. I actually have done a YouTube video about the latest volume on this channel. I'll link it up here, or I'll link it down below. Libri Labra asks, what's the story behind your channel name? This channel name is the namesake of my blog. My blog shares the same name as this YouTube channel. I started my blog when I was a teenager, when I was in high school. And when I was trying to come up with a name, I was thinking of words that I liked. And I really liked the word pearl, and I really liked the word ruby. And then my dad had this brilliant idea that he said that why don't you take these two words and kind of make it sound like a meal. And then, of course, the joke is that it's a meal that you can't really have because you can't really eat rubies or pearls. So that's the story behind it. And Cassandra Hall asks, have you watched Full Metal Alchemist, the new live action thing? I just watched it on Netflix with my son. It was better than expected. And she also adds here that she has never watched the anime. I am with you there. I have never seen the anime, and unfortunately I haven't seen the movie, but I've heard that both are really good, so I'll definitely try and check them out. She also asked, have you ever been to Mississippi? You remind me of a librarian I know named Monica who works in one of the libraries. Funny coincidence. Oh, you're sweet. No, I've never been to Mississippi, unfortunately. I am born in the US, and I left America when I was around 5. But because it is quite expensive to go back to America, I have actually only visited my birth state, which is New York. And then I've been once to Philadelphia. So there's a lot of America that I haven't seen, but I would like to travel more around in America and see more states, and absolutely Mississippi sounds like a historically really interesting place, so I'll definitely try and visit it sometime. She also asked, regarding books, any tips on matching reading level with age-appropriate content? My son's teachers want him to read books that are on his reading level for the AR test he has to take. It's hard to know what adult books are content appropriate. It's gotten easier now that he's a teenager. But this has been going on since he was 9. I don't have children myself, so I don't know how well I can answer this question. But here it goes. I think it depends a lot on what you are okay with your child reading or being exposed to. I think that's going to really vary from parent to parent. What my dad would do, for instance, is that he would kind of like pick and choose which books he would recommend to me. And he would very actively ask me what books I was reading. And then there were certain books that he would maybe say, like, okay, well, maybe that's a little bit too violent for you. Why don't you read this instead? And of course, this is very tricky because, especially if the kid is reading contemporary, like new adult releases, then it's always hard to know what exactly is inside of the books. But if they're classics or modern classics, then that tends to be a little bit more easier. So you can also try and take like adult books that you yourself think are appropriate and try and subtly pass on to your children. So I hope that helps. What is your favorite board game? Cluedo. I love Cluedo. But I also really like the Harry Potter version of Cluedo. So those are my two favorite board games. So that was my very first Q&A. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you guys have any other questions, or if you felt like that I could have added a little bit more to my answers, then comment down below. I would love to get a discussion going on, and I'm here to just answer all of your questions that you might have. If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye!